Right now, for the podcast listeners only, we're offering $5 off each ticket purchased on Formula Drift website by using FD Podcast when you check out. That is FD Podcast. I don't know if you need a capital, the FD, but try it either way. So head over to formuladrift.com, pick up the tickets, then enter code FD Podcast, get $5 off all 8 events this year. So 20th season, head over. If you're going, save $5. Might as well. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Outerzone. My name is Jacob Gettins, and we have Mr. Odi Bakchis on. How is everything going, sir?
Going great, man. Just got done working on the car. It's an excuse to finish working for the day.
Yeah, what time do you normally clock out at? I know as somebody who runs their own business, like I put in probably more hours than I should, but like, what do you average in a day?
8 hours minimum, but that's like if everything's very peachy, we do 8 hours. Yeah, I'd say 10 is like kind of a norm if you count all the time administrative stuff on the keyboard and then the actual wrenching and then driving to one facility to another. 10 hours easy. Don't ask what I did in the off season.
Dude, it's crazy sometimes. Like you just absolutely lose track of the time in the day. There's been multiple times where like my wife's come downstairs and she's like, "Hey, it's 9 p.m. I don't know if you knew that." And I was like, "No, I didn't." Cool. I'll be up to have dinner now.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for my wife, I don't think I'd ever stop working like until I go like, man, there's something wrong with my body right now. I need to like chill out. But I'm sure your wife keeps you like out of the office as well. So
yeah, keeps
us healthy.
Until I hired her and now she works for me. So it's not any better. There's times now, like even tonight I had to go up and be like, "Hey, let's wrap things up. We're good to go." So it's good. I mean, I feel like we're both in the same boat of like having our wives entangled in both like general wife life and then also the business side.
Yeah, it's so hard to turn that off, man. I'll be honest. Like my wife is my best friend. She's also my business partner. So there's times like you're out of nowhere. You're like, "Oh, hey, about that invoice or that thing sitting in accounts receivable." Like,
yeah. Do you I know with us, we'll be like, we'll try not to talk about, like, it's almost impossible. Like, we'll try not to talk about work outside of, like, general working hours. But there's a few days where I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm good. Let's not get into it tonight. Like, it's been a long day. Let's do anything other than talk about work.
Yeah, we conscientiously sometimes, like, set those rules. Or, like, sometimes I'm just like, I'm, like, really just had a mental, like, draining day. And I just warn her like, "Hey, like let's just like not talk about anything work related right now. Like I got to turn off for at least like 2 or 3 hours before the end of the day."
Yeah.
But
what do you do in your like the 3-4 hours of life that you normally get outside work?
I'm never completely disconnected. We have manufacturers in overseas in Taiwan that I got to deal with. So my evening is there. Like they're always like, "Hey, good morning, Odi." I'm like, "Dude, it's 9 p.m., man," but I just go with it. Yeah. But hang out with the kids, man. I gotta put time in with the kids. So either watching Bluey or just engaging, like playing with toy monster trucks with my little dude, or just whatever I can. And I feel guilty of not doing that enough every time. So putting a puzzle together last night. Just gotta do whatever it takes.
Yeah, the parenting guilt is so real sometimes. Like I'll get back on a Sunday afternoon or something like that. And like my kind of rule now is everything goes in my office. I unload and then that's it. Like I don't even unpack it. I just go back upstairs, hang out with everybody. And like at least the rest of that evening is for family.
Yeah, it's tough to set that time aside, especially when you have multiple businesses, a lot of things going on, a lot of cool stuff that you're super passionate about,
Yeah.
But you gotta, as a father, man, you gotta segment that day out, and that's just how it works.
Yeah, you've got your kids on the road a fair bit though. Like you bring the adventure whenever possible.
I have to, man. If I didn't do that, I just feel like I'd be missing out on their childhood, on fatherhood. So yeah. I think we were a solid month away from home in between leaving to Georgia. I took my daughter with me on the road.
Okay.
My wife stayed back. And then for a solid month almost, I was with my daughter. She was on the East Coast with me. She is homeschooled. My wife's like super good about that. So it gives us the flexibility to travel together and hang out together. And, it's the only way I could get through and keep the family structure together, I think, at this point. So yeah.
Yeah. That's like that. However, you have to build out that support structure is so critical. It was basically the reason why my wife joined the company, was because like, what other job is going to give her the amount of time off she needs so I can go and do, all of this stuff. Like that job doesn't exist.
I remember that pivotal moment where I was just like, I don't want Amy working at her employer's like office anymore. Like this is just, it's spreading us too thin, like, and the time was right. Everything came together. Like our businesses were growing. So we needed more help. We could afford it. So it helps, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, and it's such a weird time too, because you're like doing the math and you're like, well, actually you only make like $40 a day because we have to put kids in daycare or do this or move them to this spot. Like it's a weird decision.
Yeah. So. Time on road, commuting. Oh man, I don't like the way things were in the past, man. I could gladly say like the way everything's working out, the structure is great. So
yeah. And you guys were like high school sweethearts, weren't you? Or is it high school or college?
Yeah, high school we met. We were dating other people, but we met. We're friends. College things got serious, and here we are still. So, is that like your test patient for dental school? Was Amy like that's how you got your in? You're like, let me just check your molars. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but she's yeah. I mean, we just we clicked, and what's weird is she was completely different. Like she's like the biology student, like super into chemistry, like ecology. And I'm just like, man, like mechanical engineering. And then, I guess she was the one that kept me out of trouble in school and college.
That's good. I mean, you kind of need that person, to make sure you're not, going out to too many parties or acting too crazy.
Yeah, no, I was definitely the bad influence, but we kept each other in check.
That's good. And then you guys, I guess from there moved, like what was I think everybody is kind of aware of a bit of the motocross side of things. So I definitely want to get into that. But I think the part that doesn't get talked about enough is that kind of rally stint you did for a couple of years.
Yeah. And it's interesting you bring up motocross because that overlaps with Amy. She was like, super good student, and I would ditch almost every Thursday of high school to go ride at one of my favorite motocross tracks. And I started like telling her, hey, come with me, and pulling her out of school. So one of the bad influences. But yeah, after high school, when I started getting a little bit more money together, working my butt off, I bought a rally car. I was always like super into automotive things. And since a little kid playing with toy cars, and I was always into cars, my dad kind of like put me and my brother in motocross. He liked it. He didn't get to do that when he was a kid, so he kind of pushed us into it, and I loved it. But I always had like deep down like a serious urge for automotive stuff. So that's where, as soon as I got into college and started making a little bit of money, I got into cars, and rally came about.
And that was Eagle Talon?
Yeah, it was an Eagle Talon. The way Rally America was structured is that you had to run a 2-wheel drive car in order to get enough coefficients to run like a all-wheel drive car and to even run like a turbocharged car, like a Group 5 car. So we found a front-wheel drive Eagle Talon, ran it naturally aspirated until I could get my coefficients, and then I could do like some of the bigger events in a turbo car. Then we put a turbo motor in it, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. Amy was my co-driver. Naturally, she followed everything that I did, and it was a good time, man. It was fun. Learned a lot of car control, and just like the discipline of racing, right? Like just budgeting and working on the car and just logistics, all that stuff. It was a great learning curve for me, for sure.
Yeah, I never realized you had to stage it, like, mind the pun, but like stage it out like that, where it had to be 2-wheel drive NA, and then you had to work out. I guess that makes sense though, so people aren't just building monsters and going off into the forest.
I honestly always thought like rally's like just overly cautious and safe, and it makes sense, right? Like there's like really fast cars, this and that, but it's like out here in the US, I feel like it maybe it was a little overkill. Like, a lot of these people weren't like driving crazy cars on really crazy stages and putting themselves in harm. But, safety first, I guess. So we just had to follow the rules. I think NASA didn't have that stipulation, but a lot of the events in my region were Rally America at the time. So, it all worked out, man. It was fun.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always interesting understanding where different drivers come from like racing disciplines and how that either impacts their style or what they know or what they've been able to develop. Like, motocross is huge. Like the amount of guys that have come from that. A lot of it's, bad crashes, things like that. And then they're like, yeah, okay, I'm cool. Like, I'm good. I want to keep my back.
Yeah, motocross hurt, and that's for sure. But it was fun. I always remember riding as like a kid, as a teenager, and I was like, I'm never gonna quit riding. It's like, this is the best thing in my life, and I still love it, man. I would ride all the time, but now I just don't want to get wadded up and have to sit out a Formula D round realistically. So motocross is a great sport, man. It's a great entry gate. It's a good gateway into anything with engines, clutches, shifting. It's
suspension.
It's awesome, man. It toughens you up, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's, as much as it's expensive, it's not that bad.
No, man. It's, I don't know what it is now. I remember buying YZ125 brand new from the dealer for $4,700 out the door. I don't think you do that these days. I think these bikes are crazy expensive, but yeah, that was super accessible, super easy. My dad was super into it. We actually owned a business together. It was called Zeal Racing. It was a motorcycle shop. So it just was the coolest thing ever to me at the time. And it was a great stage of my life. That was a super fun family sport. My brother raced as well. He did really well. He did better than I did. He's younger than me. And he just trained super hard. So it was a fun time in my life.
Yeah. Is that where Feal developed originally, was just trying to make better suspension for bikes?
Yeah. During high school, I convinced my dad to allow me to take these suspension seminars when I was riding motocross a lot. I think it was either during spring break or I just disappeared from a week of high school to go take these seminars. And we started modifying our own forks and shocks to make them work better, to revalve them to suit our needs. And our friends were like, hey, hook me up. And then, a little bit later down the road, about a year later, my 3-car garage was full of customer bikes and there was no space for anything else. And it just kind of spiraled into a business that was solely to tune motocross suspension. We moved it out of our garage to an industrial building. My dad quit his engineering job so we can just pursue that. He was a really good engine builder from childhood. He built race motors. He kind of sacrificed his whole racing career when we were born, me and my brother and stuff. So
that was boat racing, wasn't it?
Yeah, hydroplane boats.
Hydroplane.
Yeah. And then but we kind of got him back into it, I guess, in a way, because we were super stoked about riding motocross. So he started that business with me, Zeal Racing, and it just it was back to motorsports. There was a little hiatus for him away from motorsports and back at it. And yeah, we rode that out for quite a bit. My dad actually sold that business a handful of years ago, and it's still doing really well.
That's cool.
Yeah, and he's just doing side work, building race motors and stuff, and building stuff on my cars anytime I need anything. He's super good with carbon Kevlar and stuff like that from the hydroplane days. Yeah.
I've heard he's quite the repair body man. So
yeah, he got tired of me annihilating front bumpers, and then I was using a European brand for body kits, and it was tough to get them. So he just created his own mold of a front bumper. So the front bumper you see on my car is actually, the mold is created by my dad. It's like a one-off thing, and he just makes me bumpers when I need them. So he's in Europe now, so we're on a dry spell. He's coming back. We need some more bumpers made.
Is that one of those things where you're like, hey, when you're back, we're going to need a few, just, it's been a rough couple weekends.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's cool. When it's a part of the family, just that urge to get into it, or the support, I think, is the biggest thing, right? It's a parent who understands.
Yeah, he gets it. He probably knows more maybe about certain facets of racing and being away from home, being away from family than I do. He traveled a lot in a time in Europe when it wasn't as easy maybe to travel and all that. So yeah, it's nice to have people like that in your family where you can like kind of express your struggles and they don't just stare at you. Like they actually get it, you know?
Yeah. So where did the Feal name come from then?
So when we had the shop called Zeal Racing, I had like the whole suspension segment of that business. I had a good clientele base there. And then I pulled my name out of that partnership because I went off to college. I didn't want to have anything to do with the retail sales aspect that we were a part of. I didn't want to have anything to do with racing engines. So I pulled my name out of the partnership, and then I was like, man, how can I still serve the clients that I have, served all the clients that that come to my dad's shop still, for the suspension side of things. So I was like, well, let's not shock them too much by completely changing the name of the business, and let's just change the first letter of Zeal Racing. The segment was actually called Zeal Suspension. So I was like, let's just name it Feal Suspension. Doesn't mean anything. And
damn,
there's I could create certain meanings for it, but it was a play on words a little bit too. Obviously, like you feel suspension.
I think that works though. I mean, even if that's the story, right? You're like, yeah, you just feel the suspension, like that's it.
Yeah. To me, I mean, it's special because it was a business that I built with my father, and then I continue to participate in that segment of the business and like pulled away from the rest of the business. So I changed the name just slightly. So,
yeah, it still has a tie, but it's enough separation to be like, this is my thing based off of the thing that was original.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh. Have you done any bike stuff recently? Like any suspension work, or is it all just cars now?
No, we had to put an end to it. Like we had customers, even though we weren't advertising much. I stopped going to the track. I stopped doing R&D. To do motocross suspension and to be badass at it, you have to go to the racetrack. You have to do testing because these bikes, every single year, there's new suspension technology. The bike geometry slightly changes, and like you just have to be out there always doing testing. And it was fun. It was great. But the automotive segment of Feal Suspension took off so much. And the more I put into that automotive segment, the more it gives back. So I was just being real with myself and my brother who works for me. And he was very, heavy in servicing the power sports segment. Like we, not just motocross stuff, but we did stuff for UTVs. And then we just said, you know what, we got to just take that offering out of our services because it's cannibalizing the amount of service that we could offer our automotive customers. And it was kind of tough. It was really tough to do that. So we just put an end to it. It was probably like 3 or 4 years ago that we just pulled it off. Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that recently.
It was recent, but we really faded out of it. And we just kind of had it open there for the local customers and clients that were just used to coming to us to just get their fork seals replaced. Like we just had a steady flow, but it was just getting in the way because you have to be properly equipped. You have to have a segment of your area, like prep for that, the right tooling. And, like if I do anything, I want to do it right, like 100%. Yeah. So we just said, we don't want to half-ass any part of the services that we offer as a company. So we're going to close that chapter.
Okay.
And
No, that's fair. I mean, it's better to have done that than to just upset a pre-existing group of people, right? You can kind of just cut it and be like, hey, this is it. This is the last season. It's the last time we're going to be doing this. Get your orders in now, and then we're kind of moving on.
Yeah, it was such a good gradual fade because, like I said, with servicing like motocross suspension, if you're not really active and in everyone's face at the racetrack, you're just going to stop getting the business. And once we stop purposely going to the track and spending time doing that, it kind of weeded itself out. But, we still had those longstanding clients that we had to just tell them, like, sorry, guys, like, we're done.
Is there a lot that translates over from bike suspension into car? Like, obviously, it's similar. Like, you've got, a shock and a coil and perches and mounts and stuff like that. But is there things that you've taken from that power sports segment that makes the Feal Suspension so competitive? Like, it's. I think that
you're giving away the secrets here, Jacob.
Well, I know. It doesn't have to be anything particular.
No, absolutely, man. We were doing, and it's not things that I created. It's just some of the standards in motocross suspension tuning, the way we would shim the shocks and the forks. There was like a certain way you do a supercross suspension setup, a certain way you do an outdoor setup, a certain way you do a setup for desert. And it changes the way the shock works so dramatically. Knowing that, how to manipulate the shock to serve so many different disciplines. When I started drifting, I was just like, oh man, like there's so many things to try. And sure enough, like some of the things I implemented that we learned from doing motocross stuff worked out really well in drifting and road racing. And it's just, yeah, absolutely. There's stuff that translates over. And I think we put a twist on our valving and the way we design some stuff because of our motocross background, like absolutely. And it separates us out from, a lot of the brands that have been doing it maybe for even longer than us. But, you know, we had a very diverse, I guess, knowledge base of shocks because of how we started.
Was it one of those, like you got into cars, or just got into drifting suspension, maybe opened something up and you're like, what is going, like rookies, like, what are they thinking? And then you're immediately like, okay, we just got to do this. We got to do that. Like, or was it more like, okay, this is how they've adapted, but I have some ideas based on this thing, and then start to move it over?
The biggest difference, motocross, especially if you're racing, you don't really come across that many brands that cut corners like crazy and try to cut cost, right? Because it's such a competitive niche. When I got into automotive stuff, oh man, like I remember opening stuff up with my brother and we're just like, dude, like, what is this? Like, there's some really, really poorly constructed shocks out there in the automotive field. Like, there's just manufacturers that are able to, I think, buy stuff and put their name on it, and they don't even know what's inside of it. And it was that was the biggest surprise, transferring over from the motorcycle high end, basically shocks, to automotive stuff. Just seeing stuff that has a well-known brand, but the quality just wasn't there. That's
just white labeling gone wild, right? Or it's just like one manufacturer with 5 different labels on it.
Yeah. And there's definitely, obviously, I think there might be some smaller margins to play with in the automotive world. So that kind of, that's why maybe we see some of the quality issues that are out there, but it's still surprising, man. Whereas, motocross, you serve 1 or 2 fast, good riders wrong, like your stuff sucks, and then you're done. It's hard to dig out of that hole, man.
Yeah. As much as I want to, I've one more major suspension question. As much as I feel like I could sit here and do this all day, because I very much enjoy the very technical side of it. I mean, one of my favorite things to do when I first started filming drifting was very, very tight shots at the wheel well, in as slow-mo as I could possibly get it out of camera, to watch what the wheel was doing, what the suspension was doing, how cars are loading up. It's still one of my favorite things to do, is watching how the RTR rear end is so different this year than it was last year, or how stable certain cars are, or how new guys coming into the sport, and you watch them run really soft setups and you're like, no, I can watch the car just bouncing like crazy. Anyways, I don't know where I was going with this, but what would you say is the number one thing young drivers are getting wrong with their suspension? What's the one thing where you're like, hey, do this first before you even call me, and make sure this is set correctly, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah. I think riding on bump stop excessively is overlooked like crazy, because sometimes it's hard to tell from their butt dyno, I guess you can call it, that is what's happening, but it happens all too often. And then they can try to change the valving, the shock, or change the external settings, right? The clickers, change their alignment, and nothing's working. And a lot of the time, the root of the problem is that they're letting the shocks sit on the bump stop for too many parts of the track, and it's inconsistently completely blowing traction off. So that's so overlooked, and it's such an easy thing to adjust for, with spring preload and
how
shock positioning.
How do you even know that you're doing that? You just feel it in the car? Is there something a device that you use that hey, this is your spring, this is your travel, like the zip tie. I've seen like the zip tie trick used a couple times.
Yeah, no, that's a great, easy way to do it. I mean, the proper way to do it is to put a shock, like linear sensor on the car and monitor that. But it gets kind of cumbersome. It takes a lot to figure that out. A zip tie trick, one really easy way to do it is completely set the shock. If you have shocks that the shock body length is adjustable, like the lower mount's adjustable, you could set the shock length to where the tire will physically hit the inner fender without the bump stop hitting it. And you could kind of work backwards from there, like set that up and then monitor if the tire's hitting the inner fender. And then you go, okay, I need bump stop to keep the tire from hitting the inner fender. And then before you even introduce bump stop, you could start introducing heavier spring rate, stiffer valving, no bump stop in the picture, and see if physically you see tire marks on the inner fender. Once you have that perfect, then now you can reintroduce a bump stop into that system and go a little softer or mellower on the spring rate on the valving. And then you're kind of on the money. But it's tough because every track's different. Like some tracks, you're loaded on a corner and then there's a bump exiting that corner when you're ready loaded. So it throws that whole thing out. But yeah, I mean, that's why we have Feal adjustable bump stops. It's like the coolest thing I feel like that we introduced into the market, and it allows you to play with that because I think it's such an overlooked aspect of proper suspension setup.
Yeah, it seems, I've never, I mean, I'm not a suspension guru by any means, but like that's not something that even equates to me when I think of suspension setup as adjustable bump stop. Like it's not, you think of everything before that one piece.
I know it's like the simplest thing though. Like it's, like you could have badass pistons in your shock, like really good valving, proper spring rates. But if you're sitting on that bump stop every time you load the car, like it's, your shock's physically not doing the work anymore. All that energy is going into the bump stop. The bump stop could only take so much of that energy. They usually could only travel like half an inch or 3/4 of an inch until they compress and the spring rate goes to infinity. And now your tire is just going right back into the ground and deflecting and you got no traction.
All right. Well, I mean, that's the PSA for all the young guys at home.
Hopefully I inspired people to run into their shop right now and look at the inner fender and see how much tire mark they're on and then see how close they are to bump stop just at a static right eye.
I really hope that there's like a whole bunch of comments on this section in particular where it's just like photos of rubbing tire on the inside of the wheel well.
Ripped open bump stops, like falling apart.
Yeah. That's too funny. All right. Well, we should probably get into the actual drifting part of this. So I guess the story that I've heard for you getting into drifting, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was literally a friend taking you out to a go-kart track and kind of showing you what this was. Not like actual go-karts, but people drifting on that. And then it was like an instantaneous hook at that point.
Yeah. I guess I had automotive friends all throughout time that I could remember, but no one out of my automotive friends was like, check out these drifting DVDs or something like that. Like
you weren't an option person. Yeah.
No, I just, I wasn't. And then there was a shop I was subleasing space from, where I was subleasing space so I can like operate my suspension business. And I had my rally car in the corner there as well. And someone stopped by because they were friends with owners of the shop I was subleasing space from. And they stopped by in a Skyline that had like ridiculous camber, like poke wheels, like stretch tires. I was like, what the shit is this? Like, this looks ridiculous. And obviously I gravitated to it. And I was like, what do you do with this thing? Like, why does it look like this? Is this a race car? Is this a show car? And he's like, hey, why don't you come down to Adams Motorsports Park? It's a go-kart track that is not far from where the shop was. And he's like, we jam every Thursday. Just come out and take a look. Yeah. That person, can you guess who that person was?
No, I don't actually know this. I feel like I should though.
Ryan Literal.
No, really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, he was big in the Inland Empire, the 909. That's like the area code. And that's where Adams Motorsports Park is located. And he happened to live like in between the shop I was working at and Adams Motorsports Park. So he would like drive past and happened to stop one day. And I went with him like 3 times, sat
Okay.
as a passenger, and I was just like, this is so cool. This is so much fun. Next time I came out, like after 3 times of going there, I came out with a crusty S13 that I bought off of Craigslist, and I just started from there. It was so much fun.
So that'd be like 2009 era?
2008 is when I bought the car, 2008 on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
Yeah. Solid. Yeah. I remember going to the Crab Shack after that with Amy because obviously I needed a ride to pick it up. So, yeah. So yeah, and it was so humbling because that drifting was so freaking difficult. Like I thought I had good car control coming from doing okay in rally, like beating all-wheel drive cars in a front-wheel drive car. Like I thought like this is gonna be cake. And no, it was tough, especially when you start on a go-kart track that's super technical. There's a fence, there's light poles, like
yeah.
And man, the kids back then, they were just hucking it. Like it was a cool scene at Adams Motorsports Park back in 2008, 2009. It was just like super slammed freaking S chassis with RBs or SRs in them, just like super grungy grassroots. And it was just, these kids could drive, man. And it was like, to me, it was like, whoa, like the least disciplined type of motorsport I've ever been exposed to. And these guys just had amazing car control. And that like blew my mind. I really, like that vibe altogether just got me hooked. Like I was just like, no, like like automotive racing is just like, it's overhyped sometimes. It's like over disciplined, over safe. Like I loved how like how just easy and accessible drifting was. Like that was freaking awesome. And I got super hooked.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's always interesting to find where people discovered it. I mean, mine was the first Grid Life, seeing Brian Turk go around in the white streetcar at the time. And like, it literally, I turned to one of my friends. I'm like, oh, this just ruined my life. Like, this is it. Like, I knew in that moment, seeing him, do turn, I think it's 2, the big sweeper. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is it. Like, I'm stuck on this for the rest of my life now. Thanks. That's so funny. It's Ryan Literal. I had no idea. I'm actually shocked that didn't come up in our research.
Yeah, I've said it, but there's
didn't find that article. I mean, we did find your original WordPress sponsorship website from like 2015. Ooh. That seems like you're still paying for, just as a heads up, because it's still live. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you're gonna have to send me the URL. That's cool.
I will. It's I feel like I'll let you clear it first, and you tell me if we can put it in the show notes. But you chronicled basically your entire come up through Pro-Am up until like 2016 or 2017. So
nice.
Like you want to talk
about
a WordPress
site or something?
It's a WordPress site. Yeah. You basically were like you were vlogging without the video part. Yeah. So
man, I miss that. Vlogging was like so overrated, man. I miss just like, remember what Matt Powers used to do? Like just a nice or like classic vlog. Well written, the guy is college educated, right? So it was just, I don't know. There's something about it. Like,
you should bring it back. I mean, it's really good. I think you would get a little emotional in a few spots. There's a few hard times that were really noteworthy, like your big crash in Las Vegas, where you tried to use Forrest's car, but the subframe was not correct. So then was it Tony Cisneros?
Cisneros, that's right.
Cisneros,
Forrest had a super awesome green sparkly S13 coupe, but he put an S14 subframe in it. Yeah. And we didn't know this until Kevin Wells checked it out. Man, that was a rough night. Night.
Because you guys like rebuilt that entire car to only basically be told at inspection you can't use it.
So my car like was done. Like it was pretzeled. Like Kevin like it was like, don't even try fixing this. This is done. He took my helmet, took this like FD tech sticker off my helmet. He's like, you can't use this. Like this hit the roll cage. Like you didn't answer questions when you like.
You probably had a concussion. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I was in pain. I I think Kyle Mohan had painkillers, and I was like, give me these. Like it was a bad night. So yeah, Tony Cisneros' car. Yeah, we put a lot of work into Forrest's cars. Like he was like, hey, you could use this. Just we had to like put safety equipment in it, and then we're told like, hey, this is not going to work. Borrow Tony Cisneros' car. It was a Pro-Am car, and it was missing like second gear, all kinds of stuff. And
we just made qualified like 31st or something. Like just got into it.
I had to qualify without a clutch, so that was it was like Pro-Am all over again. But you're trying to like qualify in Formula Drift with a Pro-Am car with all the Pro-Am problems. It was rough.
That's awesome. Well, I will definitely send you the link if you're cool with it. I'd love to share it because I think it's a great piece of history. I read almost every word of that entire thing, and it's long because that's part of the reason why I moved the podcast until this day because I wanted to finish it.
Oh, geez.
I had a few things on the go, but then I'm like, man, this is great.
This is like finding someone's MySpace account or something,
Yeah, it was like finding a journal, like because that's what it was. Like, I mean, you documented it all, but it was super cool. But anyways, going back, I skipped way ahead, but I'm happy we did. So you went basically from that crusty S13, as you put it, Adams Motorsports Park, went through a Pro-Am series, and then essentially into FD in 3 years. So you were 2011 was the first year, right?
So I bought the car in 2008, drove it at Adams for like 6 months, got good enough.
Okay,
wasn't great. And competed in Pro-Am 2010. So I competed in like several Pro-Ams. I think I did 12 competitions that year. I did Vegas Drift, I did Just Drift, and I did the XDC events that were local, because I didn't have budget to travel to the East Coast. Although XDC offered to put the car on a rig and then I'd have to commit to running their events. And I was just terrified because I was like, I don't have money. Like I'd have to fly, and what if like parts break and stuff like that. And then I did 1 year of Pro-Am and then hopped into Formula D in 2011 was my rookie year.
Right. Where you got Rookie of the Year.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I think I got 16th overall, but it was such a rad season, man. My first season, it was freaking awesome. I think I had like 330 horsepower LS1. Like the barrier century were so much slower back in the day, and it was just good driving, man. Like you have to drive hard. You couldn't put all the grip in the car because you didn't make as much power. And it's not like I was the only one with lower horsepower numbers. Like, everyone made less power. Like it was a good time. I really enjoyed it. And then things just got crazier.
Yeah. I mean, there's like that Diago era that kicks off so much of it. Like
that changed the game, man.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine being like in FD at that time and watching him walk in, like, cool, we're just going to lose now, like every round, like nothing we can do about it.
It shook things up, man. It was like the Achilles tire coming in and over 1,000 horsepower coming in and just like making use of the power and the tire. And it was just like, like we all started spending more money on our cars.
I can't. It's really one of those, like I always try and break kind of the history of Formula Drift into chunks, and each chunk is almost dictated by somebody coming in and really changing everything. Daigo, James Dean are two of the biggest ones. Like that, just both of those eras, right? Like that, it was a complete shift in judging and rules and driving, in horsepower and tires, like everything in both of them. And you've gone through both of them now.
There's some very black and white rules that were in effect, and that was tough. It was tough for the sport and like the fans and stuff. You'd hit a cone and it was like
that was a
zero, like
immediately.
It was insane. You're driving on, like, sometimes you feel like you're walking on eggshells, like you couldn't just huck the car as hard as you'd want to huck it because you knew there's very severe consequences for it.
Yeah.
And then I remember, like, where the camera angle is good enough to dictate that you put a tire on the line or over the line. Like, did the cone get knocked over because of like a breeze from the bumper or like actually hitting the bumper? It was nuts.
Yeah. That was also when like speed was a huge factor. And like at one point it was like a multiplier, or like your actual speed in miles per hour was like a decimal point and stuff.
Worth like up to 10 points. So like, and if you don't hit it, you don't get any of them. Like is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's gone through like so many changes that like, it's always funny now when people complain about things. And I'm like, man, like go read up on how it used to be. Cause this is a pretty great time, all things considered.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel bad for Formula Drift and the judges when sometimes like someone that comes in is new to the sport and they're like, haven't you thought about doing this? And it's like, man, these guys have put so much effort into thinking about that. And then 101 things around that thing you just brought up, and like, give the series, the judges some credit. Come on.
Yeah. It's definitely tough. I know I want to do more behind the scenes with that as well, because my view being up in the tower and sitting with spotters and sitting with judges and announcers, like, and sitting with production just to understand how the show works. Like my mind has been completely changed. The opinions I had going into FD are very different than the ones I have now because of that. Because it's so different. Watching it at home is not nearly the same experience as once you understand how this works.
No, I mean, you seeing the people around you and it's like seeing their stresses, seeing their joys, like and the hustle, it's insane. There's so much going on just to get one of these events to wrap up without too many hiccups.
Yeah, without finishing at 1:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
So you've driven in a lot of different places over the year. And what I think is really interesting is that like 2011, you came in, did fairly well, all things considered. But then 2012, you added Malaysia and Japan to kind of the list. Like how quick does that happen? I know Drive Energy had a bit to play in that, but like what a crazy sophomore year for anybody.
Yeah, it was just a good time, to be in the sport in general. And I got lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. I didn't get paid out crazy by these, like the energy drink company that I had, but they gave me cool opportunities. They took me to Malaysia, to Indonesia, to an FD Asia event, and, just hung out and met people. And that's where I met Tengu Dejan, and I got to hang out with Dio Shihara because he was also sponsored by them. Met Max Cerrito. Like, it was such a good time. And I was actually sponsored by a radiator company. And I remember M7 Japan guys like met me, and my title sponsor at the time was around. Like, they were the ones that are kind of helping, and they're like, "We're gonna take Odi from you." Like, just straight, like, and sure enough, like, yeah, they just, it happened. Drifting. Drifting was just, it opened up the doors to travel and to do so much stuff that I didn't have the budget, like at a personal level, to go and to hang out at all these countries and do cool stuff. So I'm so thankful for it. Yeah. And 2012 is like where all that started taking off for sure.
Yeah. I can't even imagine just like coming into that season and be like, this is my first pro year. Okay. Yeah. I'll go here. I'll go there. I'll do all these things. Like, but that's just a saying yes mentality, right?
Yeah. And it had to happen. Like, honestly, Jacob, I went into my rookie season without a Excel spreadsheet or anything like that about budget. Like, if I did that, I knew 100% I don't have the money to do the whole season. Like, we just went into it and we just made it happen. And I like sold off my dirt bikes. I sold off my like WRX that I had, like anything that was cool, that was worth money. Any hobby I had, everything like went to fun drifting. And 2012, like, things started clicking, and I'm so thankful it did, because if it didn't, then I had no more stuff to sell and no more things to give up to keep drifting. So
yeah, I guess like of all the places you've driven, does I know I'm going to butcher the name, Numano ring, like in Lithuania, really the biggest track, if not one of the only. Like, what kind of emotions is that? Like, I can't even comprehend what that would feel like going back and being able to do that.
That was amazing. And I think that was 2014. it was for EEDC, Eastern European Drift Championship. That was like a cool series back in the day. But it was so much fun. Like, is my home country. So drifting in general, like, got me kind of reunited with Lithuania, where I'm originally from, because as I started drifting and kind of reaching out to, more of the world, like traveling here and there, these Lithuanian guys like also had a big drifting movement going on. And they're like, wait a minute, that guy's name is Lithuanian. I think he's from Lithuania. And then like, we just started messaging back and forth, and like, I got invited to come out and do that event. And I have like a solid group, a network of Lithuanian drifters that just like, now I have like even more reason to go back home to Lithuania and hang out. Like that really opened up that door to like, just in general, drifting opened up the door to be more global, meet more people. And it's even for business. Like, so that event at EEDC, I drove a SC300. They called it a SOAR,
Yeah. I think that's what we call it in Canada too.
Yeah. So that's probably what it really is just the American, call it that. It's just probably heavier and slower in the US.
Yeah.
But
more emissions regulations on it.
Yeah. So they were, this team in Lithuania was all hyped. They're like, oh, we got this sick SOAR. It's got Shrekier like mirrors, because that's what they call the like little carbon mirrors, like 2J, like it's sick. And we just had the owner of Weissfab, or one of the partners, come down and help us install a Weissfab kit. He stayed up at night, corner balanced it, and I was like, sick. And then I hopped in that car, drove it in practice, and I was like, this is terrible. Put the cut knuckles back on this thing, like, because it was partially so much my fault. I told him put like 7 degrees of caster into it, like not knowing that Weissfab has a lot of trail in the knuckle, this and that. So it was like user error. Long story short, I win the event, and I'm just like hanging out with the owner of Weissfab that like worked so hard to get this thing like ready. Like, he didn't owe us anything to do that. He was just good friends with the team. And he like looks at me, he's like, so you want to do business? And I was like, yeah. So that, I think he just,
I love business.
we started, selling a lot of Weissfab in the US. They started distributing Feal Suspension in Europe. And I think he just liked my brutal honesty. I was just like, I don't like the way this drives. And, even though, it was my fault the way that car didn't drive well. Like, I directed the team to set it up improperly, but still, despite all that. So yeah, long story short, drifting, good networking is insane. I owe so much to it.
Did you hold on to any, like, because you moved over when you were like 8 or 9, right? Like fairly young.
Yeah.
So did you bring any of that culture with you? Was that one of those, like, when your family came to America, it was kind of like, no, we're American now. Like, I've heard both sides of it. I have an uncle who's from the Czech Republic who, like, his family was like, no, like, you're Canadian now. Like, you can still keep your heritage for sure, but like they tried to kind of push a bit more of it.
My family was very respectful of the US. We love it here. That's why we came. But they understood the importance of keeping the language alive, like for me to learn it. So they actually I went to school every Saturday, and I freaking hated it because I didn't have Saturdays. But as a kid, I'd go to this like Lithuanian school where you're taught grammar, history, and, just basically a whole nother curriculum to add to your regular school that you hate so much as a kid. So, but I'm very thankful for that, because I'm like fluent in Lithuanian. I could read, write Lithuanian, and helps me right now. Like, I could do business with Lithuanians. I could go and hang out with them, drift, and it's it allows me to. A lot of these dudes, like on Instagram and stuff, I message back and forth in Lithuanian, which is, I'm so thankful that my parents pushed me to retain it.
I was going to try and do like an opening in Lithuanian, and I realized my pronunciation was going to be so bad I'd offend people. I did it with Simon in Norwegian, but I'd spent a bit of time in Norway, so I was a little more comfortable with it. But it is a very, I don't know how to explain it, like mouthy dialect.
It's like Spanish, man. It's like, I think Norwegian's hard, man. Like that's tough for me.
Maybe because like I come from French, that like I would think
so.
But like French and Spanish are
different.
close. Yeah.
I think there's harsher sounds in the Lithuanian language, kind of like Spanish. Like there's like the R's, the R, you know. It's like so. To me, it seems easy, obviously, because I'm like that's my first language. So biased there.
I think the only phrase I had down is "keep sakasi," which is
keep
supposed
sakasi.
to be.
Oh, like, how's it going? Yeah,
all right, yeah, okay, cool. I should have done it. Shit. I'm so bad with pronunciations that I'm like, it'd be really cool if I did everybody's intro in the language that like maybe their background. That'd be neat. And then I get very self-conscious very quickly, and I'm like, I can't do this. I know. I need to
go for it.
But it was cool. It was kind of interesting learning about the country, a lot of the customs. Like, do you follow any of like the Christmas traditions, like the 12 meals without meat in it, or the big summer festival? Is that something you're passing along to your kids as well?
I'm lucky that my mom follows it, and so Christmas Eve we go to my mom's, and the 12 dishes, which is nuts, and I think crazy. They're all vegetarian. Like there's fish, but no like
beef or pork
meat,
or chicken.
And I like that. It just adds, like diversity, right? Like it's always cool to pass on things to your kids that are just the more the merrier, right? So I absolutely love it. And if my mom doesn't do it anymore, and now you got me thinking like, who else? So maybe we'll adopt it and do it.
Yeah, it's good. I know. Like with a lot of Eastern European cultures, like parents, grandparents are very crucial in the family structure. So it's awesome to hear that like you're able to keep that now as well. Yeah.
It's we hang out with my immediate family a lot here, and I speak Lithuanian to all, like my mom, my dad. My parents are divorced, so there's like 2 sets of Lithuanian families I get to go and hang out with.
Nice, 2 Christmases.
There you go. Yeah, it got so wild that we're traveling so much because then there's Amy's sets of parents that like Thanksgiving is the only holiday we don't go anywhere. Everyone comes to our house, and it's just a madhouse. But you got to do that.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Hey, everybody, Jacob here from the Formula Drift podcast. We have an awesome deal for you. So if you head over to shopfd.com and use coupon code podcast23, you're going to save 20% on any merch. So anything you can find on that website, use podcast23 at shopfd.com. Save yourself 20%. Hats, shirts, lanyards, whatever. Just use the code. Save yourself some money. So why not? Don't stop listening. Wait till the show's done. But then head over, shopfd.com. Use podcast 23. We'll see you guys out there. So I have to ask about the Genesis, because like as somebody who very much enjoys off-kilter drifting platforms, which
you strike me as a Hyundai Genesis kind of guy.
I'm a Hyundai Veloster kind of guy. I
close,
very much like
so
the 3 doors. Very close. Yes. Never a Genesis, but I have been talking about building a rear-wheel drive Veloster for like probably 5 years now, and I've just never done it. A couple people have now, and I'm like, okay.
But the rallycross ones or like WRC ones, that's like a completely different animal, right? That's nothing like it.
Yeah. And like I've mapped it out. Like so I originally came from like Mazda Proteges, which the 323 variant in Russia came rear wheel drive. So you could swap rear wheel drive those. Anyways. So then I'm like, okay, well then you could do a Veloster. And then I'm like looking at suspension. I'm like, we could fit a diff in there if I punch it. Anyways, I've gotten that far. I like obscure chassis, especially for drifting, because like don't get me wrong, like I find it very boring to watch a bunch of S chassis go around because they all look the same, they all travel the same. Like
that's the truth, man. I just like I love driving so much that I was like, what's the path of least resistance so I could drive the most?
Which I get, like it makes sense. Like an LS chassis makes sense.
Yeah, and now they're not as plentiful, right? Now it's kind of almost like a rarity, especially in FD.
So why the Genesis? Why getting into it? And then we'll get to the why getting out of it after.
Yeah, there's a brand called Arc Performance that campaigned 2 Hyundai Genesis in Formula Drift. I don't know if you remember, it was Dennis Merzanis drove one and Pat Morgan drove the other. Yeah.
Okay.
So they were trying to do their thing. And then my shop was like right down the street from Arc Performance. And I was friends with Dennis Merzanis, one of the guys that like was driving for them. And he wasn't going to drive it anymore for them. They expressed some interest to me through, oh man, there's just like in the industry, like I think it was through Nitto. Nitto's guy was super tight with the Arc Performance guy. One thing after another, Arc Performance is like, hey, we want you to drive this car. We want you to like, you're a good driver. You build cars. Like we want you to campaign. And I was like, this car looks like a complete turd. And the performance, like you guys have struggled. Like this is terrible. They're like, we'll pay you to drive the car and we'll, how much do you want? And we came to an agreement monetarily. Like it was what I needed to like push my career forward. Like it just made sense. There was some, aspirations that Hyundai will come on board and support us. And man, it's a bucket list thing for, I think, most drivers to be backed by an OE, and Hyundai was up and coming. Like their cars are getting better and better. Like it was like a cool chassis. We took it out testing. The thing drove absolutely terrible. I'm pretty sure I got it to bunny hop during a transition somehow because it would wind up and just like fling. But it was front steer. Like the links in the rear were like in terrible arrangement. Like the geometry is bad, but I saw potential. I was like, no, like this take a shit ton of work, but I could do it. So I said, you know what, guys, let's do this. I'm gonna compete in one Formula Drift round in your Hyundai Genesis. We're going to take that whole time to develop it. I'm going to do international events with it, and we'll make the thing better and better and better. And then if it works well and it does well, I will do a full season of Formula Drift in it. So we did that. We got it working just good enough to where I got it to Formula Drift Long Beach round 1. I got second place in the car. That people dubbed as the career killer. Like I straight up got messages like as soon as I announced it, like, dude, like this is the most terrible idea. Odi going straight into Pro 2, like all this stuff, man. And honestly, that kind of like lit me up. I was just like, you know what? Good.
Let me show you.
People are doubting it. This is awesome. Like I'm just gonna like hammer down and make this thing work. And after that, we flew it to Fuji. I did an event there. It was supposed to go to Canada because that's when the Formula Drift had that like World Championship.
US versus Canada kind of thing. Yeah.
The like weekend before I took that thing testing, I broke the crankshaft in half, so it didn't make it to Canada. So I shipped my 240 to Canada instead. But after that, we did a full season in Formula Drift with it, and we did well. Like I got on the podium several times. We won at least one event with it. I think it was at Seattle in Monroe, and we got 4th overall in that season. So yeah, I mean, overall it wasn't bad, but I was driving that car every single round, itching that I had a shorter wheelbase car that was more nimble and handled better and was a little bit lighter. So after that season, I was just like, I got to get back into an S chassis. Like I still have so much more as a driver. I was like, I this is holding me back. So no matter what the money was, what the circumstances were, I just had to say, no, I can't drive this car anymore. It was a great season. Like, let's continue the ARC branding on my S chassis. Like, I'd love to work with you guys, but like, we got to park this car.
Wait, I didn't realize the wheelbase was that long.
It's 111 inches. That's almost a foot longer than my S chassis. That's
a good point.
It was tough navigating that car like through the chicane and just like in the burnout box even. Like it's a big vehicle.
Interesting. I did not realize it would be that difficult. It doesn't look that big. You know what I mean?
Because the proportions are cool, right? Like it looks cool. Everything's
does look cool.
The body lines are good, but it's basically like an Infiniti G37. You know, those are really big cars as well.
Yeah. I mean, talk to Jonathan Hurst about wheeling one of those bad boys around, right?
Yeah, man, he did great in that thing. But that was every time I saw him drive it, I'm like, I know the struggle.
It's one of those empathy things where like, look, man, it gets better at around 99-inch wheelbase. Like everything will open up to you. Like, oh, that's okay. Yeah, I was curious because like I had heard like the rumors about it being a career killer. That's a very difficult chassis, but you doing as well as you did, and I was kind of like, okay, I really wanted to understand the kind of the in and the out of how that all happened.
And so, looking back, I mean, I love the challenge because it got me out of my comfort zone, right? And everyone's like, I think it showed that, look, I could hop into something else other than an S chassis and do well. And it taught me a lot about an S chassis, made me appreciate the things that I took for granted in the S chassis. And then it also showed me like, hey, there's some serious flaws in an S chassis that need to be addressed. And hence, like, now my S chassis are front steer, like the Genesis was, things like that. You get a taste of those like subtle differences, and you're like, man, that makes a world of a difference.
Well, I mean, you're obviously looking significantly better in the S chassis. So I feel like your career has kind of been like always the bridesmaid, never the bride. You've come so close on so many occasions. I apologize. I'm not trying to like just dump salt in the wound. I'm just trying to like get into that headspace, because like, yeah, there's been 2017, 2019 were both third place. 2019 arguably should have been the year. I believe that was the year where you had won like at least or podiumed the first 3 rounds.
There was a year where I think there was 2 consecutive wins and good podiums, good performance all around. But I feel like we tried different things, and it just usually towards the tail end of those seasons is when things would just not work out. I'm glad to say things are like shifting around now. There's not like that pattern anymore. Now it's just that everyone's so on it, but I don't necessarily have that pattern over and over again where towards the tail end of the season, like things don't work out. Like we've been winning and getting on the podium towards the tail end. We just had some bad luck, but everyone has bad luck. It's no excuse. Yeah. It's just,
Was that like
keeps me hungry.
Was it like a mechanical thing, or was it more like a headspace thing, or like just you kind of get tired, you get into like, retail mode, Black Friday stuff? Like I'm trying to, because I mean, that's a whole stressful time. I don't know how much you guys dive into,
every season,
Black Friday sales, but.
Oh, we do. Yeah. It winds us up pretty good. At Feal Suspension. No, every season's different, man. There hasn't been something that is carrying over season to season. So if it was, I mean, it'd almost be easier, because then I could just like nip that problem, right? But it's been different struggles. But as bummed out as I am about getting third overall or this or that, like at the end of the day, like I'm hopeful. Like I feel like I'm getting better as a driver, and it's maybe that's what's keeping me in the sport. Like it's like I'm almost 40 years old, and I'm so hungry for it, and it keeps me young and keeps me going. So maybe there's like something in the universe that's preventing me from winning the championship until, the absolute last second.
It's like not your time yet. Like in the best possible way, right? Where it's like, no, not yet. Like, there'll be a day when like this has to happen, and it'll be then.
Yeah. And who knows, like I know I could do it, but I'm not going to like get depressed over it. And, that's why you see me doing completely different things nowadays. It's like, well, how many years in a row can I focus just on Odi and like structure my whole program just to be on me, on my car? And like, at a certain point, you're just like, you know what? Like, there maybe needs to be a distraction, and just like to have something that fires you up again.
Yeah. So on that's an awesome segue, by the way.
Well, it's just the reality.
No, exactly. But that brings me into, building out the team, because like when I saw, you're like, okay, having a pro spec driver, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's like, okay, cool. We've got, and you don't have to like agree or get into numbers, but like as a business case, makes a lot of sense. It's also good to be able to kind of try and bring a driver up. You can show proof of concept. Like there's a lot of good benefits to having a pro spec driver on your team without having all of the frustration of somebody there all the time with you every round, 8 rounds. Like it's kind of 4 rounds. It's a little bit easier, right?
Yeah.
But then when I saw you're like, oh, now we're adding Simon and we've got Ben, like we've got both, I immediately went to like, holy shit, that's a lot of work. Hopefully he can keep his head in the game. And realistically, at the beginning of the season, it didn't look that way. But now I'm wondering if that youthfulness on the team, or that, seeing how Simon's been progressing and how Ben's been progressing, I don't know if that removes doubt or if that is like invigorating or how that shifted your mind.
I don't think like the other drivers influenced me like that. Having a good vibe with younger dudes around is always a plus, and just seeing how they could quickly become optimistic or just so hyped up on the car because the car is making a lot of power and they're just like, oh, this is the best, and like, that allows me to go, these cars are pretty cool. Like I should enjoy it.
It makes you step away a little bit, right? Like when somebody else is excited about something that you've more or less just slaved over for a decade.
Right. And it becomes the norm, but you realize it's not the norm, man. Like not all the cars on grid are on fire 100% of the time. Like, there's definitely tracks where our cars are just like if you could handle the car, like you're good. Like they're just on it. I think if anything, it was just, it's almost like a distraction, right? Like every driver realistically gets nervous. Like there's a lot of pressure, like just pressure from sponsors. And at the end of the day, like you got to live in the moment and have fun. And I think having, more cars on the team and enjoying kind of the fruits of my labor of being okay at building cars and managing cars, it's a great distraction and a great like motivator as well. Like now, I could enjoy the car building experience and seeing someone else do really well in it on top of enjoying the driving aspect that I've been kind of hogging to myself. It felt like for so many years.
Maybe it's like an appreciation of your hard work. Like it's hard. Sometimes it's very difficult to appreciate your own hard work because it's easy to fall into the flaws of like, oh, should have done this better. Oh, I could have been quicker here. I could have done that. But like having somebody like for me with food, right? Like I enjoy cooking, love it. I'll eat my own food. And I'm like, yeah, I could have done this and that. But I'll cook for other people. I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. I'm like, it's really not though. Like it's good, but it's not incredible. But it makes me step back and be like, okay, I did do a good job. Like I did smoke a whole brisket trackside, starting at 6 a.m. Like I should be happy with the result.
That's an interesting analogy, Jacob. Because like, yeah, you could cook badass food that tastes really good. And then you sit down by yourself and you eat it and you're like, this is delicious. But then cooking for others and yourself is like, it's a whole different experience, right?
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way. That's interesting.
I just try to equate it to my own life. I don't, I've realized that a lot of the experiences that I'm trying to negotiate by chatting with you guys, I'm just never going to have because that's just not my life. So immediately I'm like, okay, what do I know? And how can I relate this so I can somehow have a bit of sympathy for these situations? Because like, I don't know what it's like dealing with Ben and Simon all the time. Like, I don't know what it's like, having to manage the rig and 3 cars and staffing and business and all that shit all at the same time. Like, I'll never know that. But
yeah,
you do. And it's often hard to articulate what that's like.
It's tough. It's really tough. But I feel like I'm like one of those people that's like always has to keep moving, keep changing, keep evolving. And I feel like that's just like that was the direction to go. That's where I could only reinvest so much into myself, like in like hopes to win the championship. There's only so much more I could physically do. Like I feel like I'm giving myself a really good shot at it. There's always more you can do, but how much is fun? How much of that do you want to, like, how much do you want to go to the gym and how much do you want to do this and that, right?
Not
you gotta like be passionate about it too.
Yeah.
What Matt does is not for everyone. Like that's, you gotta be like, really passionate about it. So what gets me out of, Amy and I like really sat down this off season and we're like, what do we do? Like we had some serious things that came up and it made us like, we're always reevaluating like our businesses and how we're doing and if we're doing it right. And she's like, Odi, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to have badass cars driven by badass drivers. And like, that's fun to me. And she's like, that's what gets you out of bed. Like, let's just do it. Let's just build a third car. Let's do it. And, yeah, so that the motivation is just because it's fun. It's what like motivates me. It's like, it's what keeps me going. And there's obviously other factors in running a multi-car team. Like this stuff is not cheap. So scaling up like that really, and selling those seats, like it can makes your business model all of a sudden more sustainable. And that's something I've been hunting for as well. Like I have a family to feed. Like I want to be successful and Feal Suspension successful. And I hate pulling time away from that business to go out and try to win the championship in Formula Drift. Yes, we bring a lot of eyeballs back to Feal Suspension, helps us sell like really well. It's like one of the greatest marketing, techniques that we've ever done for the company is me racing. And I feel guilty if I partake in Formula Drift and it's not being treated as like a good, lucrative business. So, 3 cars makes it more of a sustainable business, and that's another factor as well.
It just allows you, without, same thing. I don't want to get into like the numbers or anything, but it gives you like, okay, this is how much this seat is. This is how much this seat is. We know no matter what, this is the top line budget, or this is like the amount of money we've got from this point. But that's enough to, get us to a certain level. Then we just have to do the rest. Whereas previously it's like, okay, I'm assuming like we got to pull money out of one business and that is a sponsorship thing. So, okay, we can move that around, but then we got to fill in all these other spots. And if Feal has an issue, now what do I do? Right? Like
it's just not being diversified as like a business, as an investor, right? Like you gotta have, so, and I don't like one business robbing another one. Like doesn't make sense to me. So, obviously that's just poor business. And I really do like building businesses, like creating business models and stuff like that. So this seemed like the logical, cool way to go. It's not for everyone, man. It takes a lot of effort. But I think I have a knack for it. So like it was absolutely like energizing to like just go through with it and do it. And it's fun, man. It's what motivates me to just do well. And it motivates me even back at Feal Suspension too. And I'm like, I come back and like, boys, look what we did. Like, look at the branding we just put on everyone's eyeballs back in St. Louis, like all 3 cars on the podium. Like, it's just, that stuff works.
Yeah, it's crazy what the team looks like now. And I think it's one of those like undeniable things. Like, RTR, everybody thinks of like a drifting team, they think of RTR. And I think after that round in particular, crazy. Sorry. That's all good. It's all good. I'm surprised mine hasn't yet. He usually hangs out like right behind the camera during podcasts. Nice. Anyways, I think now after St. Louis, it is very undeniable that the Feal Suspension team is absolutely top tier. So like that has to be, I would, obviously Ben doing well. He's a phenomenal driver in basically what is one of the best setup pro cars ever, driving in Pro Spec.
Overbuilt for Pro Spec for sure.
100%. But like it's worked out well. And then obviously Simon's performance in New Jersey, which I very much want to touch on because what was that like? You and I have had conversations about this, but like for everybody else at home, like what is that situation like when did you realize you had to battle him? And then what goes through your head at that point?
Yeah. I mean, we knew, like, obviously looking at the bracket, it's a possibility. And then as soon as I advanced and knew that he advanced, I was just like, hell yeah. Like this is, so during that event, I got to follow him in practice and we're both in the burnout boxes because there's 2 burnout boxes. One, Lucky, chill out. And I just remember like looking over at the burnout box and seeing one of my built cars with the Feal branding on it, doing a simultaneous like tire warm up. And I was just like giggling like inside. Like I was just like, this is so amazing. And then lining up and like running, following him in tandem. I remember smiling and getting so distracted. I actually like kind of fumbled on a transition because it was just so stoked. Like, it was cool. Like what Wardhouse did, I thought was super impressive. And I feel like, like the cars having similar looks, they're both S chassis. It kind of like, I was like, this is kind of similar to that. And it's that event before I even battled, Simon, I was just like, it was sinking in, like, wow, like Simon's a kick-ass driver. The cars are working really well. And then, I honestly thought I was going to win battling him. Like, I was like, we're pitted in the bracket. It'll probably be okay. But I had a few struggles on that track here and there that, sometimes it would bite me a little bit. And yeah, Simon was just on it, man. He's a phenomenal driver when he's in the right car. And I think we're all seeing that. And it was a pleasure driving with him. And it was a pleasure getting beat by him because, dude, that dude was on fire that whole round. Like, he was so close to winning the whole thing.
I know. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, I would assume it was very much like a proud papa kind of moment where you're like,
it was. And my day wasn't over, right? Like, I got knocked out by Simon and threw my helmet off, like, congratulated him, and then just got down working on his car, prepping him for top 4. Like, it was just like, I was like, my day's not over. Like, I'm still having fun, and like, I'm gonna try to make one of my cars win the whole freaking event. And that's the icing on the cake of running the team, is that if maybe you can't put it together one round or just have some shitty luck, then you could hopefully see your cars still make it to the top.
Yeah. It's like just getting an extra token in there, like, and it is incredible to see the difference in between those cars. Like, nothing against the Supra that he built, but it's just like he took to that car so quickly. And just even like, I think the first practice run in Long Beach, I was very much sitting there waiting to see what was going to happen. And I was like, oh, cool, he's got this. Like, he's good. Like, that being said, in Long Beach, if you would have asked me, like, is Simon going to podium this year? I'd be like, yeah, probably one. He's going to do well. He did well in Utah last year, maybe there again. And then like back-to-back podiums. And now I'm sitting there eating those words, which I'm super happy about, though. Like, I very much want to be proven wrong in so many cases.
It was cool to see during preseason testing, putting him in the car and him giving us feedback. And I know these cars so well that, when he was like, hey, I want the car to not drive itself so much, I knew exactly what he's talking about. And I knew exactly what adjustment to make and how much of that adjustment to make. So, it was becoming evident in preseason testing. Like, I think we're going to have a good season with this guy. And then he's just, sure enough, like, getting more and more comfortable in the car, behind the wheel. And dude, he's a force to be reckoned with, man. Like, it's a tough battle with him now. Like, he's straight, like, he's killing it.
Yeah, he's a quiet killer too, because like he's so just I don't know, to himself and quiet and like doesn't make a fuss or a ruckus. I mean, except for when he's happy, that dude yells real loud.
But in the radio, like, my guys, after he wins, they have to like peel off the headset and like, okay, he's done, and then put it back on.
I think there's like in-car from Utah or something last year where he's just like slamming on the steering wheel. But I mean, I think that's everyone's reaction. I can't even imagine how good that has to feel. Like, that's like top of the world.
Yeah, it's incredible. And yeah, you got to enjoy the moment and celebrate it in whichever way you do. Like, if it's screaming at all your crew and like making their ears hurt, that's how you do it.
Perfect. As long as everybody knows now moving forward what's going to happen, right?
Oh, they know. So. They pry it back now. Yeah.
So where do you go from here? Like, the season's not over. You and Simon are both in the points. I mean, very, very easily could win a championship, either one of you. Ben, same thing. I mean, although Pro Spec is wild and anything can happen at any event, but like, where do you go from here? Like, obviously you finish the season, but what about after that?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's one event at a time, like one step at a time. And yes, 30 points outside of the championship. Ben is about 60 points ahead in first place in Pro Spec. And Simon is just barely some points behind.
He's like 4 or 5 behind you or something. Like, it's not much.
No, not at all. So yeah, we just got to take one event at a time and just battle hard, man. Just enjoy the moment, enjoy this high. And I think the cars, like, even though, yes, I've been running S chassis for a super long time, they just keep getting better, and we just gotta, take advantage of that, squeeze the potential out of them, and just have fun, and don't look back too much. Just keep enjoying that moment and just look towards the future, and just don't get too serious about it either.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you traditionally enjoy Seattle? Like we talked about you doing well there before, but like, is that a track you enjoy running?
I do. Yeah, I really do enjoy it. It clicks. That track, like, it flows well for me. Like, it's pretty technical, which I enjoy. The judges do keep tweaking on the track. Like every year to year, there's like slight differences in the infield and stuff.
Yeah,
but it's okay. Like it keeps it fun. It's a little hard to predict exactly how it's going to be, but I enjoy it.
Is there any track that you don't like driving? Like if you had to kick one off the calendar, what would it be?
I really didn't like Orlando, but actually they put like a patch of pavement down, and it like made it so much smoother. It's actually wasn't terrible. Like, I mean, I love the New Jersey vibe. I love the track owners, but I gotta say that's probably the layout's probably my least favorite, man. It's wheel speed, vehicle speed is like the lowest out of any round, and it's just we're driving 1,000 horsepower wicked up cars on a pretty tight course. The series needs that diversity, but doesn't mean that I have to like that layout the most,
That's fair. No, that's fair. Are you in the camp of like, these cars are going too fast or too big of tire, we should dial it back? Or are you like, nah, let's just keep going?
As a team owner and someone that like wrenches on the car a lot, I'm in the camp of like, hey, let's make these things last longer. Let's like enjoy the driving aspect more, and maybe stop chasing like what's the stronger differential, what's the stronger transmission. like I'm, it's been nuts. So yeah, I wouldn't be opposed like to do what some of the European series have done with limiting the tire size to like I think it's 275 now, but things change all the time. It used to be 265 like back in Europe in most of the series. I think, I think that would help everything a little bit. Driving style, less wear and tear on the car, all of the above.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the pro spec guy showed us that the 255 can still be fast, be aggressive, be fun.
Dude, the Ben's car absolutely rips. Like when I, like jump in it sometimes, like I jump in all my cars, like during preseason testing, I drive every single one of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, that thing just is a freaking rocket ship. You might have to turn it down a little bit for like tracks like Seattle. Like it's hard to make 2 laps on a smaller tire, like on any tire. Yeah. So on a smaller tire, but that's just, we'll figure it out. We would absolutely deal with it. Obviously I don't want to put strain on the tire manufacturers. Not every tire manufacturer has a plethora of sizes to choose from.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure it could all be figured out, and who knows, maybe that's where it'll move at a certain point. I know Chris, has brought that up, like, hey, what do you think of smaller tire? And it makes sense, man. It really does.
Yeah.
We've all seen cars on too gripped up of a tire, and it doesn't look great.
No, it doesn't. I feel like that's one of the biggest mistakes that guys getting into competition drifting make. I mean, I was just at an event this past weekend, and like I watched a couple cars. I'm like, man, like just in practice, I like went up. I'm like, look, unsolicited advice here. You should probably not run so much toe in. This is a pro-am competition. Like, you should chill out a little bit. Like, that doesn't look fun. You're not enjoying this at all. So
being hyper focused on speed is bad. Like,
yeah,
I think it stunts your driving like progression, because it makes you drive in a box that like doesn't allow you to keep getting better sometimes. And you just take yourself out. Like that's what happens, on overly gripped up vehicles. So time and place.
Agreed. On the tire note, we talked to Matt about it, but I'd like you to run through when you found out about the Falcon situation kind of dissolving, and what the following couple of weeks was like.
Yeah, I mean, we were driving on the way to Winter Jam, and I got a text message from someone at Falcon that I, had a really good, still do have a really good relationship with. And he's like, hey, give me a call when you have time. And I was like, I'm in the car with all my crew. Like, should I like call you when, we're not all together in the same space? And he texted me, yeah. And I was like, shit,
Ooh.
this is not like, okay. Like this is rare.
It's a cold sweat moment where you're like, pull over now. I need to deal with this now. Like,
I did exactly that. Like we're trailering like somewhere on the 5 freeway. And I was like, hey, I got to take this phone call. Can you pull over? And like I got the bad news on the phone call. It was just like, I couldn't believe it. Like, because we had such a good relationship. Like all the drivers and teams, I think did, like they took care of us. Right. Like we had handshake deal, lunch, like during the off or before, way before that. Everything was peachy. Everything was groovy. Mm-hmm. And then, that just kind of like came out of nowhere. I got on the call immediately with Mike Meehan from GT Radial. Like I've had a good relationship with Mike Meehan. I've actually worked with him in the past. And I was very fortunate that he was just stoked on me. Like he was, good. It was, I think everything lined up for me very well. I got very lucky. I'll tell you that. I think got accepted with open arms to be a part of the GT Radial, like brand. And Mike Meehan was like super stoked about me. And it was just, I got very lucky that, I had somewhere to go.
Yeah, that's coming off kind of like a rough year as well. Like that, I'm sure was probably the last thing that you wanted to deal with at that point.
There was a lot behind the scenes that was happening in my life right before that happened. Like, and I was on the way to Winter Jam to just kind of like just wrap up the year, right? Like as whatever has transpired, like we're gonna have fun. I had Eddie with me, who is like my crew chief now. He's like new hire. That was like going to be his first event. Like, and it's a fun event. We lost Carlos, who had been with my team for 3 years. It was a tough transition, and stuff was happening on the business side at Feal Suspension that like it's just business, doing business. Like things happen, but it all happened at the same time. It was like it was an avalanche. It was like a snowball that started rolling and just picking up everything in its way. And it was tough. Like we literally had, like a meeting, like even before the season, like at Irwindale, like the night before qualifying, I had a business meeting with one of our huge clients. And like, we were basically told like we're losing that deal. Like it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. We had, some HR shifting at Feal Suspension, guys that have been there for 6+ years. Like, it all happens. It's all like going to happen. Like, and I'm happy for the people moving on. Like, I'm happy for the clients and the businesses evolving and taking the next steps. It just like, it was a lot for me, for Amy and I to bear. And Falcon, icing on the cake, was just like, bam, just let's pull that one out as well. So, yeah, it was a tough off season, man, but it lit a fire under my ass. And, this is like, I think it kind of something needed to be shaken up to do the crazy things that we're doing now with the 3-car team.
What gets you through that? Like, obviously I know Amy is your rock. Like, I think there's no denying that, but like, is it that work mentality? You're just like, okay, if everything is against me now, if everything's falling apart, the only thing I can do now is just work harder.
Yeah, I always like try to look for opportunities when things like that happen. Like you have to, like that's what you got to do. And if you do it right, you sit down and you go, look, we lost this person. He was great. Hey, now we have maybe more capital. Let's find someone with, more skill sets that the business has grown into. And like every single thing that shifts and could be very easily seen as a negative, you have to, count your blessings, and then you have to look at the opportunity that is there. So we did exactly that. Like everything that happened that could have very much been just a huge negative. We could have just been like the victim of, things happening. Like you see the opportunity in it. It would have been pretty hard to pull off the Feal Suspension look, the uniform like look as a team. If one of my cars was teal and blue, and then Simon's was, like it just.
That's a good point. Yeah,
It's been on my mind. It was kind of like a dream thing, and then that just kind of was just like, this is the time to do it. Like now or never. Like take the opportunity to like you could have this look, and it could really launch the team in the proper way. So like just take that title spot and run with it.
And I love too that like you allowed the kind of like signature color of each driver to come through as well, which like has worked so like, one, just looking at the cars, it makes it a lot easier. But two, that that neon yellow of Simon's, your very classic orange, the purple on Ben's, like it's really cool to see that from a fan's perspective, because I'm like, this is a team, but its own very unique vibe for each car.
Yeah, I didn't want to like rob the drivers of their look, like they take ownership of it. They've like built that up over the years of running their own campaign, and I thought that's special. Like like that's something as a team owner I could provide them and understand from my own self, like, hey, there's a look. And I would hope that if I drove, at any time earlier in my career, that they were accepting of that as well. And honestly, I don't want the cars to look identical. How confusing would that be to the fan, So
it was tough. It was tough with James Dean and Piotr. Like if you didn't know what to look for, like one had a blue roof and one had a red roof, like, but then they were all blue and red. Like I remember even as a super fan, there's like a few times where I'm like, oh, right. Okay. That's who it is.
Yep, exactly. Don't want that happening.
No. And I guess it, having those chassis, I did take like a pretty tight inspection on them. They're not identical, but they're all very close. I think Simon doesn't have a sunroof. You've got the little scoop. There's a couple little things in the engine bay I noticed are a little different. But having
it's evolution, man.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Simon's is an S14, right? With a S15 and face and butt. Same with Ben's. I built an S15 for myself because I was just like, I love those cars, man. It's like something about it for me. It's like people like chase like Lamborghinis, Ferraris. I was just like, I want an S15. Like that was it. So, but yeah, the evolution of the cars is you could see it. You could, like, I'm sure you saw the differences, and from Ben's to mine to Simon's, they're just built a little differently, and they keep on getting better.
Did you like finish Simon's build and then immediately go like, okay, for the next one, I want to do this. Like I want to add this.
As we're building it, Chris from Hoon Performance was a huge help. Like the off season was rough, man. We, told Simon like, hey, if we want to do this, we got to like figure it out now. We drafted up an agreement, this and that. January 1st, I basically had the green light. Like we're doing this.
That's not a lot of time.
No, it's not a lot of time. What first began as like, hey, I'm gonna like fly people in, have them help out. Ended up being Chris canceled his return flight home. Basically lived at my house for 2 months, and just freaking we railed on the car. I lost 15 pounds in this off season because I worked my ass off so bad.
Holy cow!
Yeah, I don't have that much weight to lose. So
no, you're not like a super big dude, so that's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it was nuts. It was a very short, tight time frame, and we just made it happen. And we went testing. We went testing preseason. I'm very stern on that. Like, hey, like I will make sacrifices. I will like do what it takes to like maybe not build something as elaborate, but I will do whatever I can to leave time to go testing and just like shake out the car really good.
Yeah. And I'm sure you learned so much in those couple of runs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I wish we had more time, but we pulled it off. That's all I got to say.
It's obviously working out pretty well now. So I can't, barring any massive disaster or anything else, like it looks like you guys are well on your way to hopefully both stay in the top 5. And then see from there. Yeah,
definitely. That, the goal is to win the championship every year, and we have a chance to do it. So we just gotta keep our head down and keep working and not get too distracted by that as well. I think that you gotta enjoy the moment.
I'll just keep reminding you of it every time I see it. Like, hey, you're really close to a championship. I don't know if you knew that. No. So what do you feel like your persona is in drifting? And I like everybody kind of has their own signature, I guess, and what they're known for. I know this is a very difficult thing to ask somebody, and because I have my own general opinion, and maybe I'll reveal that at the end. But I'm curious, like, how you feel like you're perceived in Formula Drift.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I could speak from what I heard, right? From people saying like, hey, he's like kind of a quiet guy and, you know, and he just gets, I guess, lets it all out behind the wheel. So yeah, I think I'm more like the calm and collected and like think things through maybe and more of like calculated. That's kind of what I've been hearing, at least. And it's in line for the most part with how I see myself. Like, I think I'm a little quieter. I hear that I'm quieter than I think I am. So that's
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see that there's a lot of very big personalities in the sport. So even
absolutely.
just somebody who is mild mannered, if you will, seems much quieter, you know, in comparison to some of these other characters.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we all know that there's some alpha males in our sport for sure.
There you go. That's a good way of putting it. There's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
The consensus that I've always heard, and this is a little bit biased because she'll kill me already anyways, but you have been my wife's favorite driver ever since she got into drifting, which is super interesting.
That is okay. Sweet.
Yeah. A little weird. I know. It's all good. We'll get over it.
But it's flattering. It's not weird. Like, yeah, I appreciate that.
The perspective she's always taken, she's like, it was that you are kind of the dad. Like, you are the guy that as soon as this is over, like as soon as the event's over, I'll pack the cars away, but like, I'm going to go play with the kids. And that's going to be the priority. And then maybe that's why I leaned into so much heavy family stuff, is to kind of, I guess, prove her right or put that suspicion to bed. I'm not sure, but like that, and that's something I've heard quite a lot, is like the dad persona very much lives within you.
Sorry, my dog keeps on pushing me around, but
it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, things change. Like, obviously becoming a father is like, it wasn't like that at the beginning of my career, right? So running 3 cars wasn't at the beginning of my career. It was very recent. So yeah, I think that's just going to be a shifting thing. And no, that's cool. I appreciate that, you know, she sees that, because I strive to be a good father and, you know, to raise my kids right. And yeah, there's no hiding that, you know, like if people on my social media want to see it or not, like, tough shit, you're going to see my kids, like, 'cause that's like a huge part of my life, you know? So yeah, I could see that. Like, I involve my kids in my sport and my businesses, you know, because I try to maximize the amount of time I have, you know, with them all the time.
Yeah. Is there a sign or something you're looking for to know when you're done, like, driving FD competitively? Not that I want you to retire, but like you said earlier, obviously, like getting closer to 40, building the teams, building badass race cars, like there has to be some thought at some point of going like, okay, I can't do this forever, but at this point is when I think I'd be ready.
So I turned 40 next Formula Drift round, so I can't quit halfway through the season. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I will try and remember to bring you a birthday present.
Honestly, like, I've always told myself and told my wife, because we put a lot of energy and effort into this, and it's stressful, man. It's like it wears on you, right? Like, so, you know, I don't want to do it forever, but the day I stopped developing as a driver, the day I like stopped giving a shit that like, what can I do to make myself better and like improve or learn something new, I'll lose interest in driving, like, flat out. So as long as I see that, like, I still have room to grow as a driver and learn, that's like interesting to me. That keeps me going. And, yeah, I mean, obviously if I don't lose that and I just get old and like my reflexes slow down and I just start like, you know, not putting it together, then I'll stop as well. But yeah, I mean, I want to keep doing it. I don't want to do it forever.
That's fair. And I think I think your body will give out well before your passion for learning will. I feel like there'll be like a day where like Amy just has to come to me like, listen, you're getting older. Like maybe this is the last year.
Yeah, that's what I've been finding. Like I don't want to stop. Like my youngest brother, he was just like, yeah, like we had the same conversation, and I was just like, we talked about something. I was like, yeah, when I like get old and I'm just like tired and I just want to slow down. And he's like, looked at me, he's like, dude, you're never gonna do that. I know you. Like this is not happening. So I hope that's how it goes.
It's all good. Being busy is an addiction. Like that's something I've kind of had to come to terms with this year. And for me, unfortunately, it came kind of from friends that I hadn't seen in a while, where they're like, hey, like, that's cool, you're doing all this stuff, but like, how much time do you get? And I'm like, oh, I don't get any. And like, are you okay with that? And I'm like, I've never thought of that. Like, I just do. I don't think about it. I just do.
I mean, like, even like keeping and nurturing things like friends is tough. Like when we get
it's a lot of work.
So wrapped up. Yeah. So, that's a real thing. Yeah. Working your butt off is an addiction. Amy points it out to me that like, yeah, I'm a workaholic. I got a problem, this and that. But like we all got some screws loose in our head if we're doing Formula Drift. Like all these drivers work their butt off. Like I see it. I know it. Like these guys are like very disciplined with how they spend their time, but it's not so much the discipline, it's the passion. And like they just can't stop because it's so much, it's what they love to do.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's very hard to stop when you're still enjoying it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm fortunate that I found a way to, support a family doing things that I love to do. And yeah, that's what keeps me going. It's not a 9 to 5. It's not work. It's just, this is what I'd want to be doing if it's work or not.
That's completely fair. Well, I don't want to hold you up too much longer. I very much enjoyed that last note because it summarizes so much of what we talked about. Is there anything else like you want to talk about or cover or parting words? Because your dog seems
my dog's about
excited
to pull this microphone off. She's like, you have not fed me dinner.
Yeah.
And we've been in this room way too long.
You've been providing attention to the wrong person. Yeah.
No, I mean, I get hit up, I guess, all the time on like social media, like, hey, what are the next steps I could do? I want to be a pro driver, this and that. So I guess can't answer all of those. But I could say now, like, just you got to work your butt off, man. It's not for everyone. And if you like it, you'll just find ways to get that better car, get those better parts. And it's just going to take a lot of work and to just put your mind to it and just work your butt off. Like, and, show your friends, like if they're going to be helping you or your employees that like you're willing to put in that time and do it and surround yourself with like-minded people. And next thing you know, you'll have a team of, people that are working with you and passionate and helping you achieve that.
Yeah. And your team is awesome. Getting to spend a little bit of time hanging out with them. They're a very incredible group of people.
They are
hilarious.
Man. It's tough to find, and there's a vetting process, and we take it seriously. And we're very fortunate to have really cool guys that are working with me, and they make things happen. So yeah, hats off to those guys.
Cool. Well, for everybody at home, thank you for listening. Odi, I really appreciate all the time. I apologize to your dog for keeping him waiting.
I'm just letting her gnaw my hand, literally. It's keeping her at bay. No, thank you so much for having me, man. Thanks so much for letting me share my story, and like, thanks for digging into like my past and educating people about it. That's awesome.
It's cool. I will definitely send you a link to it right after I end this recording, because I think you're gonna have a good read and some nostalgia, because it sounds like you didn't even know it existed, which makes
I forgot,
even
man.
cooler.
I was doing so many things back in the day, like try to get sponsorship, this and that, and yeah, now I remember that I did something like that. I just didn't know it still lives on the internet.
Still there. So cool. For everybody listening at home, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. You get to see the beautiful artwork behind Odi and the trophies. So if you just listen, make sure to watch as well, because I enjoy that aspect of it. But anyways, Thank you again, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Odi, for coming on, and we'll catch everybody next week.
Cool.
Nice cameo.